What if we told you that the most famous royal tiaras, from the British crown jewels to the modern monarchies of the Middle East, share a secret? A secret hidden not in ancient curses or lost gems, but in the name of their creator. That name is Boucheron. When Princess Eugenie walked down the aisle in her dazzling emerald Kokoshnik, or when Queen Camilla appeared in the legendary Honeycomb tiara, the world marveled at the diamond's sparkle. Yet, few paused to consider that behind each of these masterpieces lay the same philosophy, born in Paris more than 1.5 centuries ago. Today, we're embarking on a journey through the legacy of this grand house to try and understand what is the unique Boucheron code that transforms precious metal into an immortal legend. It all began in 1858, in the very heart of Paris, a city then experiencing its second rebirth. This was the era of the Second Empire, a time when Baron Haussmann was reshaping medieval streets into glittering boulevards, when lavish balls filled the Tuileries Palace, and when a new aristocracy, an aristocracy of money and power, sparkled with breathtaking brilliance. The air was thick with the scent of luxury and grand opportunities. It was in this atmosphere, within the galleries of the Palais Royal, the epicenter of Parisian elegance, that a young and ambitious jeweler named Frédéric Boucheron opened his very first boutique. Boucheron was no mere artisan. He was an artist and a visionary. In an age when jewelry art leaned towards strict symmetry and heavy pomp, he offered something utterly different. His philosophy wasn't simply to frame precious stones, but to liberate them, to make them breathe and live. He was obsessed with light, studying its play across diamond facets for hours, determined to create a piece that wouldn't be a lifeless treasure in a box, but a vibrant, pulsating part of its wearer. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Frédéric Boucheron wasn't afraid to experiment. He paired diamonds with rock crystal, employed enamel and exotic materials, drawing inspiration not from crests and crowns, but from nature itself. The curve of a snake, a dewdrop on a petal, the fragility of a peacock feather. He understood what the new elite craved, not just a display of wealth, but sophistication, individuality, and art. The house quickly attracted clients from beyond the old European nobility, including the most influential figures of their time: Russian Grand Dukes, Indian Maharajas, and American millionaires whose daughters married into European aristocracy. They came to Boucheron not for a tiara, but for a legend. They demanded not merely an adornment for a coronation or a wedding, but a masterpiece that would reflect their character and ambitions. It was this initial vision, to create not symbols of power, but poetry in metal and stone, that became the foundation upon which the Boucheron empire grew. Every tiara crafted in his workshops was more than just a headpiece. It was a manifesto, an embodiment of the spirit of the age and a personal story, frozen in diamonds and platinum. To truly grasp the magic of Boucheron tiaras, one must forget about a simple tally of carats and metal purities. Their anatomy is the anatomy of a miracle, where every detail is subservient to a single goal: to capture and tame the light. Instead of crafting massive, monumental frameworks, the house's jewelers were among the first to embrace platinum. This metal, stronger and lighter than silver, allowed for nearly invisible settings, making the diamonds appear to float in the air, gathered into a single constellation by an unseen force. Let's peek into the workshop. Imagine a diamond branch, each leaf mounted on a tiny, invisible spring. With the slightest movement of the wearer, these elements begin to tremble, to quiver, scattering myriad sparks of light all around. This technique, known as en tremblant, or trembling, was perfected by Boucheron's master artisans. The tiara ceased to be a static object. It came alive, breathing with the woman, reacting to her laughter, to the turn of her head, transforming her into a living embodiment of light. But form was just as crucial as technique. While other houses drew inspiration from heraldry and strict geometry, Frédéric Boucheron and his successors turned to nature, not to copy it, but to translate its essence into the language of jewels. They didn't merely create a flower, they conveyed its fragility, They didn't just depict a snake, they recreated its hypnotic fluidity. Consider, for instance, a tiara inspired by Hokusai's The Great Wave off Kanagawa. It's not merely a wave crafted from diamonds and sapphires. It's a moment of elemental power frozen in eternity, chaos and harmony captured in metal. Another stroke of genius in Boucheron's anatomy was transformation. Many of their tiaras were designed to be worn as necklaces, with individual elements detaching to become brooches or earrings. This wasn't just a technical trick, it was a profound understanding of their clients' lives. The same jewel could shimmer at a formal reception as a majestic tiara, then the very next day adorn the neckline of a gown as an elegant necklace. This was the ultimate luxury, the luxury of choice and versatility. Materials, too, were a canvas for bold experimentation. Certainly, old European cut diamonds, known for their soft, warm glow, were favorites. But they weren't afraid to pair them with rock crystal to create the illusion of ice, or to employ blackened gold, as seen in Queen Rania's tiara, making the emeralds blaze even more brightly against it, like mystical fires in a nocturnal garden. To touch such a tiara is to feel not just its weight, which thanks to engineering genius was always perfectly balanced. It means feeling the cool platinum, the barely perceptible vibration of its movable elements, and realizing that in your hands rests more than just a collection of precious stones. In your hands, you hold a dream, brought to life with mathematical precision and poetic inspiration. Imagine a London ballroom at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. The air hums with hushed conversations and the rustle of silk gowns. The old European aristocracy, with their centuries-old titles and ancestral jewels, watched with ill-concealed curiosity and a touch of snobbery as a new phenomenon emerged. The dollar princesses. Young American heiresses with colossal fortunes marrying impoverished but titled European aristocrats. And then, the doors swung open, and she entered the room. Consuelo Vanderbilt, the newly minted Duchess of Marlborough. That evening, she wore something more than just a gown from the finest Parisian couturier. Her head was crowned with a Boucheron tiara, and it wasn't merely an accessory, it was a manifesto. While other ladies wore heavy, generations-old diadems, Consuelo's tiara was the embodiment of light and modernity. Crafted from old-cut diamonds, it was set in an almost invisible platinum frame, creating the illusion that a constellation of stars hovered weightlessly above her coiffure. It wasn't a crown, heavy with its weight and history. It was a burst of light, a symbol of a new era. The moment the light from hundreds of candles reflected in the facets of her tiara, the adornment transformed from a mere object into a legend. It became the crowning touch of her ensemble, a visual affirmation of her new status. This tiara didn't shout about Vanderbilt wealth. It elegantly proclaimed its fusion with the 1,000-year history of the Dukes of Marlborough. It was both a challenge and an impeccable testament to taste. The ripple of reaction that swept through the ballroom was deafening. Glimpses of admiration mingled with pangs of envy. Whispers abounded about its audacity, its magnificence, the princely sum that must have been paid. The next day, newspapers trumpeted not so much the ball itself, but the dazzling tiara of the young Duchess. Overnight, Consuelo became a style icon, and Boucheron solidified its status as a jewelry house capable not merely of following traditions, but of creating them. This debut marked a turning point. It demonstrated to the world that a Boucheron tiara was not merely a relic from the past, but a potent statement for the modern era. It was a way to make an impact without uttering a single word. From that moment on, the name Boucheron became synonymous not just with luxury, but with an intelligent, contemporary, and audacious elegance, capable of conquering both the old and new worlds. If every magnificent jewel has its own golden age, then for the Honeycomb tiara, that era began in 1942. It was then, following the passing of its original owner, the legendary socialite Margaret Greville, that her formidable treasure chest of jewels was finally opened. This veritable bounty was bequeathed to her close friend, Queen Elizabeth, the future Queen Mother. Among the scattering of emeralds, sapphires and rubies was this very tiara, crafted by the House of Boucheron in 1919, whose geometric structure, reminiscent of a honeycomb, was avant-garde and daring for its time. In Queen Elizabeth's hands, the tiara gained more than just a new wearer. It found its very soul. For a woman who became a symbol of the nation's indomitable spirit during the Second World War, this jewel proved ideal. Its crisp yet delicate structure mirrored her own character, strong yet full of grace. Unlike the ancient, history-laden relics of the Windsors, this tiara was decidedly modern, exquisitely elegant, and boasted a unique architectural design that perfectly complemented mid-20th century fashion. It was the Queen Mother who transformed the honeycomb tiara into her signature piece. For decades, it remained her constant companion at the most significant state events, banquets, and official portraits. When Britons and the world gazed upon the smiling Queen Dowager, their eyes were invariably drawn to this sparkling diamond edifice. It became as integral a part of her image as her string of pearls or her famous hats. The tiara was more than mere adornment. It was an extension of her personality, a symbol of stability, order, and inexhaustible optimism. The Queen Mother's affection for this Boucheron creation was so profound that she even sanctioned its embellishment. In 1953, she asked Cartier jewelers to add 3 diamond finials to the tiara's upper edge, which had originally been part of another ornament. This touch bestowed upon the tiara even greater majesty and completeness, solidifying its status as one of the world's most recognizable pieces of jewelry. She wore it with unwavering dignity, whether meeting world leaders or celebrating family occasions. For several generations, the honeycomb tiara was not just a jewel from the royal treasury. It was a symbol of the Queen Mother, a symbol of an entire era of British history. And when today we see this tiara on Queen Camilla, we cannot help but remember the one who made it immortal. It was in her hands that this magnificent Boucheron creation experienced its most brilliant, its true golden age. Yet behind the dazzling facade of every great jewelry house lies a lesser-known side, a collection of stories typically unspoken at formal receptions. And Boucheron's legacy is no exception. The brilliance of their tiaras sometimes only serve to highlight human dramas, ambitions, and even tragedies unfolding in their shadow. Here, you won't find tales of cursed jewels, but rather something far more tangible and haunting. The truth about the hidden costs, the human price sometimes paid for the privilege of wearing these masterpieces. Consider, for instance, the fascinating origin story behind 2 of the British Crown's most iconic tiaras, the Honeycomb and the Emerald Kokoshnik. Their owner, Margaret Greville, was a scandalous figure in her own right. The illegitimate daughter of a wealthy beer baron, she inherited a colossal fortune and dedicated her entire life to breaking into the most exclusive aristocratic circles, which, behind closed doors, often sneered at her lineage. Her formidable jewelry collection became her weapon, her battering ram, with which she forced open the doors of London's most exclusive salons. Bequeathing her entire collection to Queen Elizabeth was her final, brilliant maneuver, an act that forever cemented her, a commoner, into the annals of British monarchy, effectively silencing all those who had whispered behind her back. Or consider, if you will, the dazzling debut of Consuelo Vanderbilt. Her Boucheron tiara was a symbol of triumph, yet simultaneously a sign of a gilded cage. Her marriage to the Duke of Marlborough was no union of love, but a cold transaction, her American millions in exchange for his British title. The marriage proved profoundly unhappy, and the tiara, sparkling at all official engagements, became for Consuelo a stark reminder of the personal freedom she had traded for a ducal coronet. Behind the brilliance of the diamonds lay the quiet drama of one of the richest yet loneliest women of her era. And how many Boucheron masterpieces, crafted for Russian Grand Duchesses, survived the collapse of an entire empire? After the 1917 revolution, These tiaras and necklaces, once symbols of absolute power, transformed into the sole means of survival. They were secretly smuggled out of the chaos-ridden country, sewn into the linings of coats and corsets, and then sold in Parisian and London antique shops for a pittance to buy food and shelter. Each such jewel, surfacing today at auctions, is a silent witness not only to past splendor, but also to the greatest tragedy, a fragment of a shattered world. So, as you gaze upon these flawless creations, bear this in mind. They were silent witnesses, not only to balls and coronations. They saw secret tears, heard desperate whispers, and preserve within the coldness of their metal the echoes of the most tempestuous human passions. Great jewels do not perish. They merely slumber, sometimes for entire decades, hidden from prying eyes in bank vaults or family strongboxes. But every such era of oblivion inevitably ends, and the moment of awakening is often as dramatic as the birth of the masterpiece itself. Such was the fate of a magnificent Art Deco tiara necklace, crafted by the House of Boucheron in 1935 for Mrs. Anne Norman, a prominent figure in high British society. This jewel was the swan song of a vanishing world. Created in the mid-30s, at a time when the clouds of an impending war were already gathering over Europe, it embodied the last bastion of serene luxury. Its clean lines, geometric precision, and dazzling sparkle of diamonds were symbols of an era poised to vanish into oblivion. After its brief brilliance at society soirees, the tiara disappeared from the public scene for many years. It became a family heirloom, a silent witness to generations passing, its story passed down only within a narrow circle of heirs. For the world of collectors and historians, it transformed into a legend, known only through archival photographs. And then, after nearly 90 years, the silence was broken. In 2022, the auction house Christie's announced the impending sale of Mrs. Norman's tiara. This news had the effect of a bombshell. Collectors from around the world, museums, and simply connoisseurs of beauty held their breath. Finally, there was a chance not just to see, but to possess a fragment of that beautiful, forever-gone era. Pre-sale exhibitions drew crowds as experts vied to extol the flawless condition and exceptional design of the jewel. The frenzy was colossal. The auction day itself became the culmination of this farewell drama. A tense silence reigned in the hall, broken only by the crisp clicks of telephone bids and the steady voice of the auctioneer. Each new bid, raising the price by hundreds of thousands of dollars, was a step toward the inevitable finale. These were not merely bids for an item of luxury. This was a battle for the right to become a new guardian of history. And then, the final hammer strike. Sold. In that very moment, an entire chapter of history ended for the Norman family, and for the tiara, a new yet unwritten page began. It once again disappeared from public view, passing into the ownership of an unknown collector, leaving behind only a trail of admiration and a gentle melancholy of parting. For decades, it was a phantom, a legend whispered only among the most devoted connoisseurs of royal jewels, the Greville emerald Kokoshnik. Everyone knew it existed, that it was part of an incredible inheritance bequeathed to the crown. They knew of its daring Art Deco design and, of course, its central cabochon emerald, weighing nearly 94 carats, a stone of almost mythical size and purity. But no one had seen it. It lay in the vaults of Buckingham Palace, like a sleeping dragon, awaiting its moment. And then, October 12th, 2018, arrived. St. George's Chapel in Windsor, the royal wedding of Princess Eugenie. Millions of eyes across the globe were fixed on their screens, and the moment the bride stepped out of the car, a collective gasp, transitioning into an ecstatic murmur, swept through the jewelry appreciation community. Shining upon the princess's head was it, that very legendary emerald Kokoshnik by Boucheron. This was not merely a return, it was a sensation, a triumph, a resurrection from oblivion. In an instant, the tiara ceased to be just an artifact from Margaret Greville's will. It received a new interpretation. If in the 1920s it had been a bold declaration of its first owner's wealth and status, now, in the 21st century, it became a symbol of continuity and family history. Princess Eugenie's choice was brilliant. By foregoing a traditional veil, she made the tiara the focal point of her ensemble, allowing the world to examine this long-lost masterpiece in every detail. The green glow of the emeralds perfectly harmonized with her red hair and eye color, creating an image that instantly became iconic. The world went wild. The next day, every fashion publication and news portal featured close-up shots of the Kokoshnik on their front pages. Experts dissected its construction, its creation story, the origin of its stones. The name Boucheron once again resonated in the context of one of the year's most high-profile events. This single public appearance did more for the tiara's reputation than decades of exhibitions ever could. It breathed new life into it, giving it a new history inextricably linked to one of the happiest days in the young princess's life. Thus, the Kokoshnik's second birth took place. Its value, already colossal, skyrocketed. But it was no longer about financial appraisal. On that day, the Greville Emerald Kokoshnik definitively transitioned from the category of expensive items to that of priceless cultural icons. It triumphantly returned to the global stage to take its rightful place in the pantheon of the greatest jewelry creations of all time. So where do these legends reside today? The fate of Boucheron's most famous creations, which we've discussed, is inextricably linked with one of the world's most guarded treasuries, the collection of the British Crown. Both the Honeycomb tiara and the Greville Emerald Kokoshnik are now part of this invaluable assemblage. They no longer belong to one person, even if that person is the monarch. They belong to history and the nation. Other iconic jewels, such as Queen Rania of Jordan's tiara, remain in active use, continuing to write their history for the world to see, but now in the context of national symbols. Their status has changed dramatically. From elegant accessories that a queen or princess might choose on a whim, they have transformed into historical artifacts whose public appearance is a meticulously planned event, imbued with deep symbolic meaning. They no longer merely adorn, they represent. They convey the continuity of power, the steadfastness of traditions, and the cultural heritage of an entire country. When Queen Camilla wears the Honeycomb tiara, she doesn't just pay homage to the Queen Mother, she demonstrates the unbreakable link between generations of the British monarchy. How does one appraise the truly priceless? To speak of the worth of such pieces in millions of dollars is to oversimplify their very essence. Their true worth is built upon several profound layers. The first layer is tangible, the weight of platinum, the clarity and carat weight of the diamonds, the singular presence of that central emerald weighing 93.7 carats, a gem almost beyond compare. The second layer is the creator's name, the impeccable reputation and unparalleled artistry of the House of Boucheron. But the paramount, defining layer is provenance, the documented history of ownership. The fact that these tiaras have graced the heads of iconic figures of the 20th and 21st centuries renders them utterly priceless and indeed beyond mere transaction. Yet, the vaults of Windsor are but one address. Other Boucheron masterpieces lead more reclusive lives. Some, like Mrs. Norman's tiara necklace, reside in anonymous private collections, surfacing only within the pages of exclusive auction catalogues. Others hold pride of place in museum exhibitions, such as at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, where they appear before us not merely as adornments, but as quintessential examples of high art from their respective eras. Regardless of their current location, one truth unites them. They have become what they were always destined to be, custodians of eternity. So, what then is this singular Boucheron code, this alchemical formula that transmutes precious metal into an immortal legend? Now, having traversed the path from Parisian workshops to royal treasuries, we can offer a definitive answer. This code is not a single formula, but a harmonious fusion of three core elements: audacious engineering, poetic vision, and a profound understanding of the human spirit. Boucheron's engineering genius imbued their creations with lightness and life, causing diamonds to seemingly float in the air and tremble with every movement. Their poetic vision drew inspiration not from heraldry and regalia, but from the curve of a wave, the delicate fragility of ivy, the precise symmetry of a honeycomb, crafting the poetry of nature rather than the prose of power. But the paramount secret to their immortality lies in their astonishing ability to create jewels that became not merely accessories, but mirrors of their wearers. We see this truth reflected in every story told. They are Margaret Greville's ambitions, cast in platinum. They are Consuelo Vanderbilt's quiet drama, encrypted in a diamond pattern. They are the Queen Mother's indomitable spirit, frozen in the geometry of the honeycomb, and Princess Eugenie's modern fairy tale, finding a happy ending in the brilliance of emeralds. Each tiara absorbed the emotions, hopes, and destinies of those who wore it, becoming a silent yet eloquent chronicler of their lives. This is precisely why, as we behold these masterpieces today, we perceive something far greater than mere jewels. We witness the physical embodiment of human passions, power, love, and loss. This is not simply a collection of stones and metal. It is an archive of grand narratives where every diamond is a frozen tear or a flash of joy, and every curve of platinum a trace left by the hand of history. Metal may tarnish and fashion may shift, but the stories told in the language of diamonds are eternal, because a true masterpiece does not merely reflect light, it reflects life itself, and in that reflection it finds immortality.